What is up to all the difference makers out there? I have the guy in the studio today that has made all this possible. Like, we really literally wouldn't be sitting here in this spot right now if it wasn't for this guy across from me. So I am super excited. You know, it's super funny when new businesses come into town. I don't know if anybody else's town is like this, but we have this thing called Facebook, and you hear people like when new restaurants come in, it's like people I think believe that city council plans what businesses come in. Did you ever see that?
Oh yeah.
People are like, oh, we don't need another restaurant. Oh, we don't need
another Mexican restaurant, another mortgage company. Should start selling them together.
Start selling them together. So a couple of years ago, I was driving through town, and if you listen to my podcast, you know I love my downtown Brighton. And I'm driving around, I see this new sign going up saying Speakeasy Podcast Studio, and it's like, obviously at the time I was doing a podcast in growing my brand, and not only that, but coaching solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, one-on-one that are looking to grow their brand. And I was having a lot of conversations about starting a podcast, getting on podcasts, and the feedback I'd always get is great. That's a lot of work. And so when I saw the sign go up, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so it's not the city council that puts businesses in, it's creative ass people that come along and put a business in town that is awesome. And I had no idea how this would kind of unfold, and that I'd get a chance to meet Rob and have the relationship I have with them, and be inside the studio, and it's all unfolded. I'm super excited to have him in the chair across from me, because it's been a long overdue conversation to have Rob in the hot seat. So Rob, welcome to Coffee and Grit.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Long-time listener, first-time guest.
So super awesome. Super awesome. I heard there was a little bit of a prank that you had in the office today.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, the whole thing originated a few weeks ago. It's been an ongoing joke for a long time that I look like Gru from Despicable Me, which is accurate. It's very true. So a couple weeks ago, one of my videographer was like, "Hey, Tori," she's like, "Hey, we're thinking about all dressing up like minions, and you can dress up as Gru." And in my head, I was like, all right, yeah, that's cool. But there's no way. In my head, I was like, there's no way in hell I'm shaving my beard for that. So then last night, my wife was talking to me while I'm shaving my head, and she's like, it'd be really cool to see what you would look like without a beard. So she's in cahoots with all of the people at the office, unbeknownst to me, trying to encourage me to do this. And then she went and I have a black pea coat and a black and gray scarf, and she went and put that in my truck, again, unbeknownst to me. So I drive to work with it, and then I got to work and everyone is dressed as minions. So love it. I love I love them. Putting all this together, and it's actually pretty funny. So my face is gonna be cold for about 4 or 5 days, but it'll be all good.
That's hilarious. I had to add that story because I love walking into this building. It's obvious when you walk into a business that has a good culture. So that's kind of where I want to start with it, is walking in here. You can tell everybody loves being here.
Yeah. And that's been really important to me. Like, I want people to love what they do. You're never going to bat 1,000 at work. You're never going to come to work every day and love it. I'm the owner. I certainly don't. There's days that I come in and I'm like, I don't want to be here today. I don't, just not today. And you're always going to have those days. My goal was to have as least amount of those days as possible. I had one of my employees recently go through a really bad week, just client issues and just nothing that she did, just client issues that just stack up and they weigh on you. And I'm like, my main goal is so we never repeat this week for you again. Mm-hmm. And that's important because they take care of my clients. I'm not, I have over 50 clients. I can't see 50 people every month. I never have any time. So that's what they're there for. And if I can take exceptionally good care of them, they will take exceptionally good care of my clients.
I think as you were saying, that's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
People say that I got to take care of my clients, and they put all the emphasis on that and then don't take care of their employees.
Yeah, it's a mistake. You're making a huge mistake. The moment you value clients and money more than your people, your business is now a short-term business. And that's just a fact. And that's a fact that most people forget. If you look at financially, and we talk numbers a lot around here. If you pay someone like $14 an hour in this competitive marketplace, people are going to shift and move and leave. You have to be competitive. You have to keep people at a good, reasonable amount, of course, juxtaposed what the business can handle. But like for me, when I hired my first full-time people, when I was budgeting it out, the first person I hired, I needed to give a wage that to me was above $15 an hour. That was above what I thought was, what everyone was saying is this living wage, which I agree with. It should be higher than that. And then second, I need to be able to afford health insurance for them, or else I don't have any business hiring an employee.
Yeah.
So that was my standard of hiring someone. Granted, I know a lot of businesses aren't built that way, but if they were, they would be more successful. And that's a fact.
Oh, it's a fact. If your people don't have anything to worry about, like, I have to worry if you get sick or something happens to their family or something, that's a huge weight.
Yeah, it's huge. And also too, like just retention, like unless you've hired and fired and rehired, you don't really know how expensive it is to hire somebody.
Yeah.
So when I was doing my MBA, I had to do a peer-reviewed study on employee retention. And with that went along with the costs of rehiring someone. And practically speaking, to replace somebody that makes about $50,000 per year costs me anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000. Mm-hmm. And you might be like, well, why is that? Well, I can't take as much new business because I'm retraining. I am pulling myself and my key leaders in to rehire, to interview 8, 10, 12 people.
Yep.
And we're doing that 3 times because we interview people 3 times before we hire them. And then I'm training that person. So I'm pulling one of my key people out to train this person. So now I have 2 people down essentially while I can't take on new business.
Yep.
And you add all of that up and it gets very, very expensive very, very quickly.
Plus the cost of human error because there's going to be mistakes made along the way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then my time overseeing to make sure that's going well. So there's just a lot to it. And it's not as simple as just going and finding a warm body. I mean, it can be that simple, but then your business isn't going to last.
Exactly. I have a client in the commercial cleaning business, and they're a huge piece in the marketplace now, no matter what job, obviously, is people, hiring people, right? And so try hiring in the cleaning business. Like, that's not a sexy, glamorous job, right? In every prospect they go into, it's like, oh, we're having a problem with people. They're having a hard time hiring people. But then they want my client to skip through their process of hiring. Like, no, we need you in here like 2 weeks from now. Well, you're telling me your problem is people though, right? Like we've got to go through a process. We've got to interview people 3 times. We got to make sure it's not just having a warm body in the seat. Yeah.
It's interesting you brought up cleaning because to me, that is one of the industries that most business owners that are in that profession do not understand at all when it comes to people. It's typically low wage, hard work, high turnover. And if you paid people more, if you had a much more thorough onboarding process, even though you were paying out more in payroll or contractor dollars or whatever it is, you would have much higher grossing jobs because you have a consistent team that you can bid on consistently. If you're constantly capped and good opportunities come up that you can't take because you don't have the people, how much cash are you walking away from? And you did that in the name of paying somebody a few dollars an hour or less.
Yep.
Like, does that make good long-term financial sense?
Yeah, it does not. They do the math at the beginning.
Yeah, they just think here's the gross, here's the net. But like when I invest, I think about compound interest. I'm not going to invest if there's no compound interest. It doesn't make any sense. It's not an investment. Now I'm just, I might as well just light cash on fire. That's what you got to think about though, is what's the long-term benefit of this going to be? Like when I hired all these people here, it took time to do it, a couple of years. My goal is still to this day isn't making this company profitable. I don't care. I want to make a really strong, sound foundation filled with good people that love working here. The money will come later.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even if it doesn't, then I'm still cool because I gave 10 people good paying jobs that they were happy to come to. So even if it never happens and, something tragic happens, like I still did good things here and I'm still happy with the work we did, even without being wildly profitable.
How did you get this mindset? Like, has it just always been you? Did you just you learn from somebody or?
That's a good question. I really don't know. I mean, when I was growing up, like I grew up in a pretty rural, lower middle class type environment. And you didn't really, no social media back in the day, right? I was born in 90. So when I was a kid, there was no comparison games. There was none of that. So you really didn't know what you didn't have, because everyone else around you didn't have that either.
Yeah.
So for me, it was always like, I very early on was a very selfish, egotistical person when I was like 16 to 20. And when I first started off, I was working in the hospitals. I worked in the ER, did some EMT work, did that from the time I was like 16 to 22. And somewhere in that process, a switch flipped where like in the patient care services where I cared way more about the patient than I cared about my own well-being.
Yeah.
So I was willing to take risks and, put my life at odds for someone else instead of me.
Someone you might not even know.
Exactly. And that carried over into the business side where it's like, look, as long as my basic needs are met, I'm okay. Like there's really nothing like, if you make over $30,000 a year in America, you are in the top 1% of world income earners. I think it's like 34,000. But like that's insane to think about. Granted, the socioeconomics are different from country to country, which is why it's cheaper to live in, Central Africa than it is in the States. But the point is like a lot of people focus so much on like having excess and having all these extra things. They dedicate time to that rather than investing, whether it's in stocks, bonds, or people, companies, whatever it is. They forget about the long game. Everything is short term. How am I going to look pulling up to this club in this Lambo? It's like, well, that's cool, but that $1,000 could have fueled whatever business that you wanted to do that would have paid for 5 of those in 30 years.
Yeah. It's so funny. I don't know. Do you listen to rap at all?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like Jay-Z. I love like Jay-Z raps. There's literally a song in one of his newest albums where he talks about like when he was younger, he was given an opportunity to buy this piece of real estate and instead he bought a gold chain.
Yeah.
And how that piece of real estate, how he like did the math in this rap, which I thought was really cool of how much money it lost him versus this gold chain. It was super cool.
Yeah. And that's for some reason, what I'm trying to understand is like, I think it's because it's very hard to articulate a business lifestyle that's meaningful, right? I can sit down and talk for an hour about, what I've done to build Wayne Media, what you've done to build Roar Consulting. And it can be very hard to distill that into a really quick message that appeals to a lot of people, right? If you're a rapper or if you're an NBA player or a football player, it's very easy to distill a lifestyle of excess to where people would want that.
Yep.
It's much harder to distill a lifestyle of like long. That's why Warren Buffett's one of the most amazing thinkers of our generation, but no one's really quoting him that often because he's boring as hell. And he's not boring and like he's stimulating to listen to, like very exciting person, but his lifestyle isn't.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where like I think to me
it's hard to sell that.
It is. It's very hard to sell that, and that's why to me like one of my all-time favorite innovators is Steve Jobs. Because he also lived a very minimalist, kind of boring lifestyle, but he had such an aggressive personality, you had to pay attention to him.
Yeah.
And that's what I think was always interesting about him is he didn't have a lifestyle of excess, but he was a very, very difficult personality, which made him a fascinating individual.
I love Steve Jobs is like just studying him, and
he's one of my top 3. It's looking at his life and what he did and how like just the genius behind it, more so than just creating products, like a business mindset. How he took Next and used it as basically a shell company to get back into Apple, like just really incredible details that people miss. You look at the iPhone, the iPad, the 98 Mac, but it's more than that. Like the time when he got voted out of Apple and
Pixar.
What he did in between there. Yeah. Like even that, like, I was talking to my daughter about that. I said, hey, the same guy that created the iPhone also created Toy Story.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's incredible.
Isn't it incredible?
Yeah. It's because it's such a gap, right? But that's
coming off the biggest loss of his life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like you hear stories about that, like how down, you're on top and then all of a sudden you're everybody's failure.
And you got voted out of your own company.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine.
And then to turn it around and create what he created is insane.
Yeah. It's incredible. He's a brilliant mind. One of my absolute favorites.
So how did you go from being in the ER and being in that world to being in business?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I first graduated high school, I wanted to be a doctor. So I went to Saginaw Valley, enrolled in their pre-med program, and my game plan was do that for 4 years, go to medical school. Like Wayne State was probably my number one target, and then go be an ER physician. Like that was what I wanted to do. And so I worked in the ER, worked in some cardiac units, did some float work through the hospitals. I worked in Tawas and then again in Saginaw for about 4 years. And towards the end of it, especially when I was in Saginaw, like that hospital that I was working at was a very unethical place, very unethical. Very cold, very rigid, didn't value people, kind of valued profits more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that has shown itself to be true, over the 10, 12 years since I've left there. And I was just getting burnt out. I worked nights and weekends. So my schedule would basically be like, I'd work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'd go to school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I also had a part-time job at an insurance company that I worked at during the week. And then on nights, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I worked 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., getting up Monday morning at 7 a.m. to go and flip my schedule back from nights to days to work and go to school. I did that for almost 4 years. So
that's brutal.
It is brutal, but it's also conditioned me to where
Yeah.
so when I started Wayne Media and I started grinding this, I was like, well, this is nothing compared to like the hospital grind.
Yeah.
Because you can't fall asleep there.
Oh yeah. No kidding. People's lives literally depend on it.
Yeah. So that was really important. And then I was able to grasp a lot better concept of like what an actual grind is. Cause like people have this bullshit hustle and grind, and you're posting Instagram selfies and saying, I'm really out there grinding. It's like, dude, put your phone down and go to work. Like, so people want to give this perception that they're busy.
Yeah.
But they're making more busy work for themselves on social media than they actually are in their work or profession or whatever they want to be doing. And for me, it was like, well, after I got burnt out at the hospital, I was like, I want to go into business. So I flipped my major, had a really hard time in college, like my first 2 to 3 years, couldn't really figure it out. I wasn't going to class. Actually got kicked out of Saginaw Valley for academic probation violation. And then, so I couldn't go back to school there. So I had to go find another place. So I went to this small town school called Baker College in Owasso.
Oh, my hometown of Owasso.
Yeah. So my whole family's from Corona and Durand.
Okay. Oh, no way.
Yeah. Yep. So
have we talked about this?
No way. We have not.
Okay.
Yeah, so my grandpa was actually on, that's who this company's named after, is Wayne Media. His name is Wayne Johnson. And he worked on the Grand Trunk Railroad out of Durand.
Okay.
So he was one of their conductors and brakemen there for like 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So that was like, railroad family, kind of, that was his main jam. And then my dad went to Corona High School, and then he was a musician. So he did that for a long time. And then we all moved up to Northern Michigan.
Okay.
After I was about 6, I lived in Flint for about 6 years, and then we moved. So pretty crazy, but
we're up north.
West Branch.
Okay. West Branch. Yeah. Yep.
So the town's actually called Prescott, but it's so small. It's like 300 people. Like no one's like, where the hell is that? It's like near West Branch. It's like, oh, I've seen it on the map.
So we used to take summer trips up to St. Helen.
Yeah. Yep.
Because my great grandparents are buried there. They used to have a cabin up there, or a place. They used to live up there. But
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. It's a beautiful area up there.
Beautiful area.
There's nothing up there.
Nothing. You see a lot of hunters in the fall.
Absolutely. A lot of hunters. Hunters in the fall, bikers in the summer. That's kind of the main, the main commerce up there. And snowmobilers maybe in the winter if it's good snow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during that, I went to the insurance company. I was like, I'm going to flip to business. So I went to Baker, and then my GPA, my first 2 years at Saginaw Valley was 0.8. So not good, not good at all. And then I struggled the first couple of years at Baker because I was still like, do I want to do this nursing thing? Do I want to do medicine? Do I want to do like lab science? And I was floating around with that for a couple of years. And like the underlying thing that I learned was like, kids, do not go to college unless you know what you want. Like, unless you're going to have something that like you get out and there's tangibility.
Yeah.
It's such a waste of money because I almost racked up like $100K in debt doing this.
Medical school, like doing that is not cheap at all.
No, and this was pre-med. This wasn't even like the fun
pre-med,
stuff.
Yeah.
This like it's all expensive. And then when you're flipping degrees constantly and setting yourself back, it gets more expensive. So then I said, you know what? I'm going to do business administration. Keep it really simple. Did that, finished in 2016. So I was 26 when I finished my BBA. Then I went immediately into my MBA program at Spring Arbor. And that was a really interesting dynamic too, because I had one kid at the time. My wife was pregnant with our second. And when I enrolled in the program, they didn't tell me that I couldn't stop. They said, if you take off any semesters, you have to go back to the beginning of the program because this is the last core that we're offering. And I was like, okay. I wasn't really worried about it, but I was like, well, if I needed to take a break because I had baby 2 coming in, and I was working full time. And that was a full-time program. So I had to take 3, master level classes at the same time and work and family. So I crushed that in about 18 months. And then
this is where like all the hard work from
yes,
came back.
And then it was a lot of late nights. And I remember my last, so I could only enroll in the MBA program if I had my bachelor's finished, obviously. So, but I would have to wait a year unless I finished my bachelor's in like the spring semester or whatever. So I'd take 24 credits in order to finish it, which is like double what a normal semester is. So I told my wife, I said, hey, if you can just bear with me for 12 weeks, let me just double up. I can crush this semester and then I'll do my MBA program and I won't have to wait a year because I don't want to wait another year to get into something. Right.
Yeah.
That's the college I wanted to go to because I really liked it. So I did that and I got a 4.0 that semester. And that was like a big success for me because I was like, I didn't really know what to expect taking, twice as many credits. Finished that, went to the master's program, finished that. And then as I was finishing up that program, I wrote the plans for this place and said like, all right, I love podcasting. I love media. I love the art form. Hate marketing companies. Most of them are garbage. Most of them are just, they want short-term hits. They want to, the one that I poke at the most, I can't remember the name of it anymore because they're so trashy. But there was basically a company that came over here. They bought Yellow Pages.
Okay.
And they turned it into like a digital marketing platform.
Yeah.
But then they went bankrupt, reformatted under another company name, moved over to the UK and started selling business in the States again. So they basically just started, they basically turned over. Haibu is the name of it.
Haibu, yeah.
So they have a ton of Haibu reps that are floating around here, and the reps are usually pretty nice people.
Yeah.
Company.
Because they're normal people that are local. They just hire them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what they do. They hire influencers in the area.
Yep.
But the problem is, if you have a website, Facebook, all the things through Haibu, they own it, not you. So if you stop paying them, they take all of your collateral away, all your assets that you'd use for your business. So, so I hated that. I hated that model of marketing agencies. And I was like, well, if I'm going to open a marketing company, my main goal is to actually invest in whatever community I'm going to land in. So Brighton was the target. And then, we built, the company started officially in 2018. First full year was in 2019. We started building this place in 2020, opened it in January of 21. So it was a long process. And Chris, my web developer, he's also my cousin. Him and I worked together at the financial company that I was at doing IT work with Johnny, who also works here now. He was our boss.
No way.
Yeah. And Johnny retired after we all got outsourced to India. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
We got a phone call late at night. Listeners are probably like, holy shit, this is going in like 14 different directions right now. But it's just such a crazy story. Because like, have you ever been outsourced before? You ever gotten the call?
No.
Dude, it's crazy. So I remember vividly, it was, today's October 31st. It was October 26th.
Okay.
And it was in 2019.
Okay.
A year prior to that, they had fired one of our vice presidents of the company. And that vice president was kind of the last block because he didn't like outsourcing. He didn't see the value in it. So they let him go. And my suspicion, no one knew this at the time, and I was just guessing, they let him go because they started bidding out our jobs to this Indian firm. And he was going to blow everything up if he was still there. So they let him go. So I told my wife, I said, hey, we got about a year to get this company straight. And then something's probably going to happen at Jackson, which is the company I worked at. And so sure enough, October the next year, like at our company phones, it's an iPhone, but they have like full control over what happens with it. So like, when you get an Amber Alert?
Yeah.
Is that sound?
Oh my God.
It was like, it was like mandatory meeting. You absolutely have to, come in tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. main conference room, IT staff. Company's about 5,000 people. The IT division's about 350. So we're sitting there with like
350 people.
Yes. And, they're trying to sell it to us because what they needed us to do was they needed us to stay on for at least a year to train our replacements. And so they gave everyone like a contract offer and whatnot. And they said, if you stay for the year, you get this bonus, you get this and that. And at the time I was under contract because they had paid for my MBA and I owed them 2 years on contract for that. And I was 1 year in. So I was like, well, if they sell my contract to another company, what do I do with that debt? So I went and talked to the legal team and HR for the company. And they said, all you have to do is sign the contract and move over to the company. Once you're over there, that debt's automatically forgiven because it's on Jackson's books. Oh. And I was like, okay, good to know. So I signed a contract and then I quit the first day. And that debt was forgiven. Yeah. But that was the scary thing, was like, they're trying to so basically you had 5 days to sign the contract or you were going to be terminated. And then, they promised everyone you'd have jobs there for 7 years. They just made all these false promises. And come to find out, I left obviously within a couple of weeks of that. Chris was still there. He worked there until I think June. But then a lot of our friends and whatnot were already getting outsourced or fired or, replaced or whatever it was within that year. So that whole 7-year thing was just bullshit.
Just trying to get people to stay in.
Yeah. And then it was funny too, because right as I was transitioning, ABC News called me because I posted about it on social media.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, do you want to come and do an interview about this company? And I was like, not really. Because at the time I was getting ready to start my company. I didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was going on the, news to shit talk a company.
Plug your company in the meantime.
Yeah.
Show up with a Wayne Media hat on.
Yeah. My full name is robwaynemedia.com Johnson. I just wanted to let you guys know.
Shirt on.
See, had I thought more about it, that's what I should have done. Yeah. But I actually declined it. And they called me 3-4 times. We really need someone to go on the record about this because everyone in Lansing was super upset about it. It's 300 jobs that would be potentially leaving. So anyhow, from that transition to the business full-time in the winter of 2019, basically December of 2019. So that first year I had the company open, I did both. That was really hard. And then transitioned over fully in 2020. And then I brought Chris over as soon as I could from Jackson. And then Johnny retired about a year later. And that was when I was getting the Speakeasy spun up. And I was like, hey, man, you're sitting home. You want to come hang out? Get the band back together? And then so he came and started helping me out. And just a phenomenal leader, really good mentor for me. So that was cool to have him back here.
That's so cool how that comes together. It's like relationships, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the weird thing is I can't give him an annual review or any type of review. I'm just hey man, you're doing great. That'd be such a weird thing for me. Hey, let me talk about your performance, even though you've rated me on mine for 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah. I was there for almost 10 years.
That is so crazy.
But yeah. So it'd be a weird thing for me to be hey, I don't care if you broke the monitor in the studio for fits of rage. It's hey, great job. Keep it up. See you tomorrow.
Johnny, you have full range.
So
it's the seal of approval. You gotta.
Yeah. It's super cool to have a bunch of people here that I know and trust. And I worked with Chris for a long time there, a few years, and got to know him really well. He's my cousin, but we weren't close. I had never talked to him. So that's crazy. My family's pretty weird. I knew of him. I saw him probably 5-6 times when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But we weren't remotely close. So
was it a coincidence you worked together, or how did that?
Well, what happened was we went to a wedding, one of our other cousins' weddings we went to, and we started chatting, and he hated the job that he was at. And at the time we had an opening at the company, and it was on Johnny's team. And I was like, well, I'm interviewing with Johnny. So I'll put your name in. We'll see what happens. And then in my opinion, he did the best job of everyone we interviewed. So we started working together. And then as I was working on Wayne Media, I was doing websites. And started training him on websites and kind of showing him just so I can have some backup. And then when I cut over here full time, I said, hey, as soon as I can hire you at a full-time developer position, you're my first call. And then him and Amanda came over. Amanda was working for me part-time for a few months as she was finishing up school and kind of getting out of that transition. And then she came in full-time and Chris came in full-time, and they were really my first 2 full-time people.
That's so cool when you can build it with people that you know and trust.
Yeah. And Amanda was a cold call. She just hit me up because we both went to Spring Arbor and we had a similar professor, I think. So that's how that worked out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So obviously we're in the podcast studio, and as we started talking and learning more about your media company, it's this is a genius how you pull everything together. So
I appreciate that.
Tell us about that.
So essentially I wanted a company that was 100% transparent. The biggest problem I have with marketing companies is I say, hey, Jason, I called you, you agreed to come do a pitch with me, right? You're sitting down talking. And basically the whole time the lingering, you know this, you're a smart sales guy. The lingering thing that's floating over the table is, well, how much is this shit going to cost? Right. I wanted to take that out of the equation. And more than that, I wanted to put it out on a platform that was almost as if it was stamped in concrete.
Yeah.
So that way when I give the price, it's not like, well, I'm not giving you the price. That's what the website says.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not me.
Yeah.
It's already there.
Yep.
So that was something we did that was very different, was we listed all of our pricing on the website for the podcast studio, for marketing, videography. We built a website calculator that you punch in how many pages you have, and then it spits out a price. How much copywriting do you need? How much e-commerce products? Calculates all of that and gives an estimate. That's what I wanted. I wanted a very transparent company that operated on this philosophy of extreme ownership, where everything at the end of the day is my fault as the leader, and I will throw myself in front of whatever bullet comes across for any of my employees, because that's my job. Because at the end of the day, I'm the one that put them in that position to fail. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If I, Grant's engineering this podcast, so if I train Grant on how to be an engineer and he screwed something up and the client's coming at him, well, who trained him? I trained him. I told him what to do. Yeah. I gave him that bad advice. I didn't write the proper procedure. I didn't put him in a position to succeed. And so it's my fault at the end of the day. And that's a very hard concept for people to grasp. But what I found is that if you do that, it resonates with everyone in the company and they start adopting that, which has absolutely happened. And I don't know if I said A or 1, but regardless, we'll call it B2.
B, yeah.
B2. Yeah, whatever.
Bingo.
Yeah, bingo. Somewhere some old lady just had a stroke. She's like, I did it, Rick. But so then the second thing is you have complete control over the situation, right? If there's a fight and then we're all pointing fingers and saying, hey, this person did it, or it's this person's fault. No, it's my fault. Let's chalk it up to that and let's solve this problem.
Yeah.
We're not sitting here pointing fingers anymore. Now it's my fault. We're good with that. We'll move on. If we need to debrief that later, we can do that, but let's just solve the problem. And that makes things a lot easier for people.
It doesn't matter whose fault it is. What all it is
in that
is
moment, it doesn't, because it's about the solution. We can talk about the fallout afterwards.
Yeah. So one of my clients, they had a director of operations. He's since quit, so I can talk about him freely.
Okay, put his picture up, Grant.
Put his picture up. Anyways, it's just it's everybody else's fault. Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's everybody else's fault.
It's not me.
Finger pointed.
Yeah.
I told them I had this conversation, and those people literally think that they like, that's a good reason.
Yeah.
I
told them about it at the water cooler. Okay, cool. Well, those don't count. Those conversations don't count.
Well, and even if they did, and I've done this as a leader, it's like, well, I told them we had this conversation. Did they get it? Did I confirm that they got that they got it? Yeah. And, were they trained and prepared to even do that? Like, just because I told them to do something doesn't mean that they understand even what's going on.
Yeah. No, it's huge. You have to have buy-in from people. And in order to have buy-in, you have to explain why. If you don't have buy-in, then no one's going to carry out the mission throughout the company, right? So we've had several meetings here where I've had we call them an all hands meeting, where I'll say, hey, I need everyone here at 7:30, everyone here at 8. We have something major that we all need to discuss together. We have a major development, or when I closed the Louisville office, I had to explain to everyone why. I had to explain why, even though that sucks, it's not a bad thing for us here in Brighton. Everyone's jobs are fine. Those are important things, because if I didn't do that, and then one day someone just walked in and they're like, oh, Louisville's closing. Well, shit, what's happening with Brighton? What's happening with this? And it starts to seed a lot of doubt. Exactly. So it goes back to the transparency thing. I'm an open book. I'll tell people whatever they want to know within reason. Some things I can't talk about just because of directional issues, or, but I want people to know that I truly do care about them as individuals here, and that they're more important than the work that we bring in, because it's true.
Well, and when you can pour into that why, and when you're explaining things, again, you have a team here for a reason.
Yeah.
And even though you are in charge at the end of the day, even though you're at top, even though you have the ownership of everything, you have people that all have all kinds of different perspectives and talents.
Yeah.
And when you can bring people in the loop and bring them into the challenges, they have a different, maybe they have a solution for it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And when you do that, like when you do bring in new people, like the one thing that I was always fearful about was, at one point I had like 4 or 5 people, and I liked all 4 or 5 of those people. Like we became friends, and we kind of had this tight little, relationship and whatnot. And then every time you add a person, you're worried, is that new person going to upset the balance of the chemistry that we have here? And after, our head count has been as high as 16. And it was when we had both locations running. And even during those days, like chemistry wasn't necessarily an issue.
Yeah.
Every time we added someone, you'd always have little conflicts and dust ups and things that you need to rectify, but like everything was usually pretty good. And now, it's like sitting here now in October of 22, like things are great.
Well, because you're setting a tone and setting a culture, and you're setting that extreme ownership. And if I would imagine, have you hired a bad fit?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do they remove themselves pretty quickly?
I removed them pretty quickly.
Yeah, they stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, and that's the thing where it's like, hey, we're gonna take a risk. We're gonna assess 30, 60, 90 days.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna see how it goes. And if it doesn't go well, that's okay. I mean, we're gonna have an honest conversation with them about why it didn't go well. So hopefully they can prepare for their next venture and do well with it. And I don't spend a lot of time thinking about, I made a bad hire, or I did this or did that. It's like, hey, we knew the risk. Everyone's a risk when you hire them. I went and spoke at Clear University last week, and I was talking to a bunch of business students about human resources. And I was like, listen, the reason why it's important to interview people more than once is because, like, I said, who in here has been on a first date? And like everyone raised their hand. I realized how bad of a question that was to ask college students, because that can bring a lot of shame, because the nerd sitting in the corner is like, come on, man, you put me on blast. Like,
my hand's up.
He's putting up 2 hands to overcompensate. But like you have, when you go on that first date, you're not sending yourself. You're sending your representative.
Yeah.
You're sending the best person fit
the best version of you.
Yes, absolutely. You're sending your agent essentially to negotiate, to make sure like everything's cool. And then it's like, okay, now that we're both cool, now you can see the real me. And that's how interviews work too. Like you're putting your best foot forward. You're making sure that you're saying all of the right things, or some people are saying all the right things that they think I want to hear, but that's not really what I want to hear, Yeah. And that's why that second and third interview is so critical, because people will typically let their guard down, and you can actually see who they really are. And that's important.
So true. I sit down with people in interviews just like this, and you'd be surprised when people tell me. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I'll leave with, why'd they tell me that?
Yeah.
I can't believe they said that.
Yeah. It's like, there's an image I won't get out of my head for a little bit.
There's a guy I interviewed a couple months ago, and he was like, I'm not coachable. He told me he's not coachable. Oh. He was like, I've been around the block, and I'm my days of when the sales manager can come in and show me a new trick those are over. Like, well, have a great day.
Yeah. Luckily for you, we don't want to coach people here. So it's a great fit. We have no culture. It's going to suck. You're going to hate it. Like, welcome aboard.
And we don't pay on time either.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't change us on that. We're not coachable.
We're not coachable either. It was a funny statement. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed the most is I have 2 females that run the company. One oversees Wayne Media, one oversees Speakeasy. And what I found is like there's so much. I think it's I'll call it unintentional disrespect, but like I'll be sitting in an interview and I'm not doing the interview. I'm just sitting there.
Yeah.
They know I'm the owner.
Oh.
I introduce.
Yep.
This one's the hiring manager.
Yep.
This one's the creative manager. Whatever it is. And when we get to the end of the interview, the candidate stands up, shakes my hand, ignores these 2, and leaves.
Oh.
And that has happened, and I'm not kidding, more than 10 times.
That's a fun social experiment.
It's really weird. And I'm like, I'm telling you, this is the person you need to impress, not me. Because if she says that she's in, like, she can sway me.
Yeah.
I will trust that, in her leadership, that she's making a good call. So this is the person you need to impress, not me. And it's really interesting how I've seen that play out.
It'd be a great ending follow-up question as they're leaving. Be like, hey, real quick, one last question.
Yeah.
Why didn't you shake her hand?
Yeah.
like,
yeah, because I can understand if they didn't shake anyone's hand.
Yeah.
But like, I even had one person, like, they like extended their hand, or like, one of the girls extended her hand and they just went like this and like almost like a fake out and they just left. And it was awkward. It wasn't like intentional. It wasn't like the whole, oh, I'm cooler than you thing. It was just like, it was just awkward. It was awkward as hell. Yeah. Hilarious. And I'm like, all right, he's hired. That's pretty funny.
That guy instead's in his car like, you idiot.
Yeah.
You idiot.
Like, damn it. Not the time to be funny.
Why'd you pull your hand away?
Yeah. It's really interesting. And that's important here too, is like, I want everyone to feel respected. I want everyone to be respected in their role. Because at the end of the day, like whether you're brand new or you've been here the longest, like you are either an expert in what you do or very soon you will be.
Yep.
And with that does come respect that I demand our clients have of our people. And if you don't have that respect, then why'd you hire us?
Absolutely.
You know, and that's something I've really tried to cement here is, we call it whiteboard day. It was a day that happened in 2021 where I came in early and I wrote all of our clients on these whiteboards in my office, and we have project leads. Uh-huh. And I gave markers to the project leads and I said, hey, you guys tell me who needs to get fired as a client, who's bad communicator, who's, driving you nuts, who's being disrespectful, who's rude, who's not paying on time consistently, who is it? And green means they're good to go, like they're staying. Yellow means you think we can work on it with a conversation. And red means I'm going to call them today and they're gone. So we had I think 55, 60 clients at that time. So we went through every single client. There was less than 5 that were in the red. And, I called those clients and told them what was up and they were gone that day. And that was really important to me because I wanted to show my project leads that I really do care about you more than this business. Mm-hmm. I probably fired $100,000 in business annually that day. It didn't matter because that $100,000 was getting absorbed and sucked up by that person having to spend so much extra time doing things that weren't being respected.
Absolutely.
Or they didn't care about.
Yep. And it sets the bar. You don't want to sell to everybody. We've talked about this before. You don't want everybody to be your client. You want the people that appreciate and respect what you're doing, right? And appreciate people.
Right. And just like they're not a good fit for me, I might not be a good fit for them.
Yeah.
My style might be too casual for them.
For sure.
They might not want the guy in sneakers and a baseball hat running into their board meeting telling them all the things they're doing wrong. And and I respect that. It's fine. You got to have the vision and image and culture for your company that you're comfortable with.
Yep.
And I understand that I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I'm a little more brash. I'm a little bit more, I speak very hard sometimes, but it's because I care. I want it to resonate. I don't want to waste time.
Yep.
Because I know that your time as a client is your money. And if I sit around talking about niceties and taking 3 weeks to say something that I should have said in 3 minutes, then I've just wasted you a lot of time and money and my time as well.
Yep. And sometimes that 3 weeks to that 3 minutes is a difference between them staying in business or not, or, spending a lot more money than they needed to.
Yeah. Or making a hire that was unnecessary that it takes 90 days to undo.
Yeah. It's the same thing, having conversations with people. We talk about leadership in just having sometimes you have to have confrontational conversations or tough conversations. Sometimes you have to fire somebody.
Absolutely.
But putting off those conversations is creates an even more negative situation.
It makes you think too much. And, what I've always found is difficult conversations are always best when they're driven by data. So if I have to fire someone, I'm going to sit down with a list of things that I have found unacceptable. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give a few of those things. I'm going to let them go kindly. And then if they have any questions, I'll keep going down the list and I'll sit there and I'll answer any questions that they have. But I can't just walk in and be like, hey, Bradley, you're fired. Pack up your shit. You know, that's not effective for them, me, people in the company.
Yeah.
It might feel good in the moment, but it's not cool. No. It's not a good thing to do. So even though when you're having hard conversations with people, you have to have data. You have to have some type of a script, not like every word written out. You have some bullet points to follow. That way you can stay on track. Because you'll have those conversations where it's like, you meant to say one thing and then you got caught up in the heat of the moment and you said another. It went off. If you're married, you absolutely understand this concept. But you meant to say something else and then just all of the, passion or rage or whatever it was forced you to say something else.
Yep.
Well, you did it yourself, but like it just contributed.
It came out. Yeah. Stay on the script for sure.
Right.
Stay on the data. Yeah. And I want to help people first off. If you're coming to them and you've never had a conversation with them before about these list of things, have conversations with people along the way.
Build up the expectation that it's coming.
Give them a chance to correct it.
Absolutely.
Because, it's like that the people in yellow, is it just a conversation? Is it just setting of the expectation? Do they just not know?
Exactly.
I have a salesperson now that came from a very aggressive sales environment where people were cutthroat. And so she has different concerns that other people in the organization don't. Yeah. In that, so she's like almost in a PTSD and people are like, what's wrong with her? It's not that there's anything wrong with her. She's got to kind of settle in a little bit and realize it's a different culture.
That's a good way to look at it. I've had people here that have come from environments that are very soft, that are probably too soft. I've had people come from environments that are too hard. And it's like, listen, this isn't a daycare. Also, it's not the trading floor on Wall Street. Yeah. So, we're in the middle of that. Yeah. It's casual, fun, but we take this very seriously. So that's really important. And the extremes are extremes for a reason. And that's why we avoid them. Those are boundaries that we don't cross.
When it's like the extreme ownership piece is like,
that's an extreme we adopt.
Yeah.
That's one we'll take.
That's a tough one. And a lot of times though, because people are so used to excuses and making excuses, it's so hard. I had this guy that would just like everything first thing out of his mind or out of his head during a conversation would be an excuse. It's like, whoa. I'm not mad at you. I'm not yelling at you or anything else. We're having a conversation because there's a chance to correct it. There's no excuse needed. It's just,
where do you think that idea comes from of people? Is it self-sufficiency where people, they want to sacrifice something else to maintain their image? Because I've noticed, like, I'm sure I do make excuses from time to time, but like that's been something that's been so essential to me is like, listen, if I'm in the wrong, I'll own it. If it was something that was under my control, I'll own it. If it's something way out in left base that like I had zero control over, if it's like, hey, what about this nuke that went off in Poland? It's like, well, shit, man, that's not me. I didn't press the button. But like, where do you think that comes from? Where people are so quick to make an excuse rather than just to listen and learn how to not do it again?
When you put it that way, it sounds so easy, right? Like, but it's the emotions tied into it, and there's something in our science to where it's vulnerable and it hurts. We don't want to be wrong. We don't want to feel like we're insufficient. I don't know I think everybody probably has a little bit of a different driver.
Absolutely.
Everybody has a different reason why it hurts so much to be singled out or to feel like the blame's on you or whatever.
And also the way in which it's done. Like if you're singled out from a room full of people, you're probably more likely to be defensive. Right?
Way more defensive.
Where like I almost enjoy that because that's a really good opportunity for me to teach people how to take criticism.
Man, yeah. I'm fractional leadership, and I literally for an EOS structure, I have a rock in like you report all quarter long. Are you on track? Are you on track? And like the whole quarter I'm on track, and then one day I'm like, oh shit, really? I'm not on track. And I'm like, I've got to go to the leadership team and own it. I got to like tell everybody I'm not on track. And like, everybody's like reporting on track. Right. So I said it, I owned it. I got it back on track. And then when we came down to the quarterly meeting, the director of operations was like, man, he was like, there was a moment. He was like a few weeks ago when Jason came to the meeting and said, I'm off track, that I had to sit and look at myself and be like, am I really on track? And he was like, and I realized I wasn't. He was like, I was just kind of I didn't want to say that I wasn't.
Yeah. You're just falling into that group think.
But I'm like, man, that was very vulnerable for me. That was hard because I'm not somebody that is not a doer. Like I pride myself on getting it done and taking that ownership. And so to come in and from in front of a high performing group and say, I dropped the ball and I'm not on track. But it was cool at the end to say, it set the bar. Like he was like, I felt like, okay, now I've got to come back and tell everybody I'm not on track because I didn't own it.
Yeah. No, and sometimes it's the hardest thing to do. Like sometimes here I'll make a really critical mistake for the company and we have Slack. So I'll put it out like in our whole company thread. I'm like, hey guys, here's what I did wrong. Here's what I'm going to do to fix it. Here's what I've put in place. That way you guys don't step on this as well. And that's really effective. And it sucks to do that because it's like, you don't want no one ever wants to be seen as like less than or seen that you're not like a good leader. But like what I wish people would understand is doing those things make people see you
as
much
a good leader
better than if you're just always acting like you're 100% got it together.
Absolutely.
You know,
that is leadership. And I learned so much from my mentor, but he used to always say, don't let people know that you were wrong. And like, to me, I gained more credibility from saying, you know what, I was wrong, or you know what, I was wrong for saying that or whatever it is, whatever.
And that's a really interesting thing. Cause I think, you know, politically we learn that you can't really give an inch to your opponent because they'll take it and exploit it and expand it and make it worse. You can't
bury your throat because they'll cut it, right?
Exactly. And for me, it's like, you know, cut it. Let's do it. Like, you know, if more people had their throats cut, to use your analogy, like more people would be willing to explain when and why they were wrong.
What's the downfall of our society? Look at everyone that's tried to hide. You know, Bill Clinton, Lance Armstrong, Mark McGuire, Barry, all these people that have tried to hide whatever their secret is. If you just came out and said, yep, I did it, it would be over so much quicker if you just owned it.
Yeah. You ever seen the movie Hell or High Water?
No.
It's a great movie. It's one of my top 10. Basically it's about these two brothers that are robbing banks. They're raising money to buy this farm, to buy their mom's farm that the bank is trying to take from them because there's oil on it.
Yeah.
Chris Pine's in it. It's really good. Essentially, like as they're robbing banks, like their goal is to not hurt anybody. They just want to raise this money, and they're stealing the money from the bank that is taking the land from them. So it's kind of like a Robin Hood type thing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So it's a really good movie, but one of the brothers is like, one brother is very good, and one brother was in prison and he just got out. And during the middle of the movie, the good brother asks the bad brother, he says, you know, he's like, why are you doing this? And he's like, 'cause you asked me to. And he's like, I'd do anything for you. And the good brother's like, well, do you think we're gonna get away with this? And it's silent for a minute. And he's like, I've never known anyone to get away with anything. And like, that's where it ends. Ooh. And I'm like, that's where that particular conversation ends.
That's got chills. That was a good one.
It's really good because like at the end of the day, no one gets away with it temporarily, but like whether it's your conscience calling you into question down the road for that decision, whether it's uncovered, it's going to come out what you did.
Yeah.
So you have to, it's much easier to own it and explain it.
It's tough to run from it. It's tough to make excuses. It's tough, but when you own it, I think of like Eminem at the end of 8 Mile, right? Yeah. When he's like, here's all the stuff you're going to say about me. Yeah. It's all true. Yep. You kicked my ass. You had sex with my girlfriend. Yep. You like, you know, you did all this stuff.
Yeah. My mom lives in a trailer.
Yeah, yep. Here's the mic. Say something about me. I own it. That's me.
Go ahead.
What can you do? How can you hurt my feelings? If I own it and I know this is me, I'm going to be as vulnerable. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on.
Yeah. Go ahead and tell these people something else that they don't know about me.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, shit.
Silence.
Yeah. It's like, well, I guess that didn't work out well. You know, and that's the whole thing is like when you are transparent like that, you know, going back to business, like people can't say that I, you know, say one thing and do another. It's right there. You know, it's like if I meet with a client and I say, hey, you know, what's your budget? I don't have to make that budget their price now. Like I can say, hey, we came in under budget because of these things.
Yeah.
You know, it puts me in a much better place to negotiate. Well, not even to negotiate, but just to demonstrate my value because I don't have to negotiate because my price is my price.
I love that. It's on my website. It's on the.
What do you want me to do about it? I can't just edit it. Yeah. You know? You know, it's what it is, and it's that way for a reason. And that's one thing you got to be comfortable with is if you're in business, and you know, let's say like our creative package, like our most expensive creative package is like $2,700 a month, and for a lot of business owners, that might be like a really big hit. But when you think about it, you go and hire a marketing person and you need videography or photography or social media or whatever it is, you start adding all that stuff up, you're going to learn very quickly how expensive it's going to be, more expensive than that. But if you get to the table and you say, hey, Rob, my budget is $800 a month, there's literally nothing I can do. And that's okay. Yeah. So I'm just saying, hey, you know, we're not a good fit for you. You know, there's other agencies in town that might do it for less or, you know, but like that's your prerogative. But like I can't cut my processes, my procedure, and my people to fit one client. Yep. And that's something that's really critical. Is like we are built on processes, procedures. We have a project management tool. We have people that run project management. the amount of time it takes us to cut a project down to fit that small of a scope just isn't worth it. And to be honest, we'll probably screw it up because we're not used to doing things like 12% of the way.
Yeah.
We might pick a different 12% that you don't like, that you're now pissed about, that would have been included in the whole 100%. It's not a good fit. It doesn't work. So it's okay to say no. And when you say no, that's a good thing. Typically the cheapest clients, the ones that are going to nickel and dime you, are the absolute worst clients.
It's so funny because I was going to ask you when you're doing the red line, yellow line, green line, how many of those red line customers, because you were talking about the ones that had, treated you the worst, the ones that wouldn't pay their bills on time. How many of the people that didn't treat you the best or were constantly haggling you and then didn't pay your bills in time? How many of those were the same people?
Yeah, very, very, very likely all of them.
Isn't that funny? What's the science behind that?
Well, I think a lot of it is like you have the people that want something for nothing.
Yeah.
And they're very self-focused. They're very self-centered. Like we have businesses that come in all the time and they might have a $12,000 website. They'll cut the check the next day and they're fine. They'll say, hey, whenever you guys are ready, we're ready. But back in the day when we were building websites for like $1,000, like that $600, the initial deposit took forever to collect. The website took 3 times as long.
Yeah.
Like it just didn't work out as well. And it's because people that don't understand how to spend money, and I mean how to spend money, not everyone can spend money, but how do you spend it?
Yep.
The people that understand how to spend money are going to spend it without care because they understand the outcome. And there's a big difference there.
Yeah. The other people are just like penny pinching, hoping that
and they're micromanaging the process as well, which is frustrating the creative team, which is making them less creative, which is making them less likely to want to work with you. Like there's a lot that goes into that people don't see. I think we get into this idea that once we enter into a transaction with someone, we chalk them up to a robot. This is going to happen. This is the expected outcome and we're done.
Yeah.
There's so much more that goes into that. And there's so many micro influences that take place that get a project from A to B that people just miss. And if you're constantly micromanaging, or like I had one client that I was doing consulting for, and they called me every day, weekends included. I wouldn't answer on the weekends, but like at a certain point, it was like, and they're not here anymore. Surprise, surprise. But that was a drain. And when you are that involved, when you're looking at things from that narrow of a perspective, you're never going to see the big picture, And that's a good contrast. I had a recent client. They came in, they've seen some of my successes in like the trades industry, and they're like, hey, blank check, whatever you want, do it. And I was like, okay. And whatever budget he gave me, I think it was like 20 grand. Like I was like, dude, you don't need to spend that right now. Like spend half of that, keep the 10, whatever. Yeah. Like you don't need to, like if someone's telling you to spend that, they're just taking your money.
They're just taking your money.
Because you don't have the bandwidth to do 20K worth of work. You don't have the bandwidth to do all of this right now. We need to start really slow and scale up. But, someone that's new in the game, they're like, oh, his budget's 20, so now I got to add on shit to get to 20. It's like, no, you don't. Like do what's necessary to get it done and then move on. And that guy's going to stick around for a lot longer.
To your point, though, going back earlier, there's so much noise in the marketing industry, and marketing is such a broad term. So many people consider themselves marketers that are just not.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's my least favorite term. So like around here, we've been stripping it from our vocabulary. On the website, it's creative services.
Oh, I love that.
Because our tagline right now is more than marketing. Mm-hmm. And, I was talking to my wife about this last night, actually, about like, we need to change this because we need to find something that's more identifiable with us. But marketing is like the person that does text message marketing or email marketing or print marketing, or they make graphics to go on billboards and they're a marketer. It's like, no, a marketer is someone that can understand industry trends, can understand how markets move, and they can understand how to get somebody from A to B with a positive total ROI, not just return on ad spend, not just return in this one little subset that makes you look good, not just how many impressions you have. It's someone that can analyze data and use that data to move a business forward. That's a marketer. If you're playing around with Canva and you're scheduling posts on social media, you are not a marketer. Yeah. You have aspirations, but doing this is difficult and you don't always succeed, and there's no textbook to tell you how to do it. And that's a fact.
Yeah, and doing it by yourself gets pretty crazy because there is none of that in textbook.
It's trial and error. Like when I was running ads, like I was running large scale A/B ads. I was running like 200-300 ad sets at a time, sifting through the data, finding the trends. Like it is work. It is hard to figure out what's effective. And then not only are you playing against the trends of the industry with the people and what they want to do, you're also playing against the trends of the social media platforms and their algorithms for how things are pushed.
Yeah.
So you're constantly in a battle. And what I've always come back to, what always is the best starting point for a business is authenticity. If you can be authentic, if we can relay that to a group of people that are close to your target demographic, we will have success.
What do you think people have the hardest time figuring out their target market?
I think a lot of it, if I'm being honest, I think a lot of it's because they don't care. Like they got in the industry for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
They thought it would be easy. They thought they'd make money. And that's why the majority of businesses don't stay open after 5 years. Or whatever the stat is. I've read like 14 different ones from 14 different publications.
Yeah.
But like
I've heard 90% in 5 years.
Yeah, a shit ton of businesses close after 5 years. That should be like the universal stat.
Shit ton.
Yeah, shit ton. So
I can see the measurement, like the scale, shit ton over here.
Yeah.
And like the
Well, that's just a fact. Like it's very hard. And there's a lot of people that are in this industry or that are in their industries that don't really care about the outcome.
Yeah.
And because of that, they don't care to know their audience. We've all been into places like that. You've been into the store where the owner's a prick, right? They're mean. They treat the employees rude, and I am now in the position where like, I don't care what that person thinks. I will call them out in front of their employees and never see them again. And I'll be fine with that because somebody has to speak up and the employees sure as hell aren't going to do it in fear of their jobs, rightfully so. I understand that.
Yep.
So I feel like it's an obligation for people that are in those leadership roles to hold other business owners accountable. And just like when we talk about salary or fair wages, there's a lot of business owners that fundamentally disagree with me on what we ought to be paying workers. And I think workers ought to be paid exceptionally well, certainly over minimum wage.
Yeah.
Conversely, I don't believe we should put legislation in place to force that. So I'm on kind of both sides hate me.
I agree. Yeah.
I don't want the legislation, but business owners absolutely need to take responsibility and pay their people well.
And not everybody's going to do it. We know that, right? But like, I'm not a rules guy either in the sense of like, let's put law into place.
Yeah. How effective is that usually?
It's not effective. Yeah. When just everybody wants.
You're going to see a sudden boom in the contractor market. 1099s are going to go through the roof. People are going to find a way around it.
Simple is not easy. It's what everybody wants to make excuses and not take responsibility, and that doesn't get you anywhere. And then blaming the external circumstances.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a mess, and that's one of the biggest reasons businesses fail. Businesses don't fail because of lack of capital. They fail because of lack of creativity. Like they're not thinking about people. They're not thinking about expected outcomes. They're thinking about themselves.
There's so many times I've seen in the past 4.5, almost 5 years since I've had my business, people post in social media groups like, if you were to start a business today, what would you start? Or I've got some money. What kind of business should I start that can make money? Like none of them. You're not going to make money in any business that you're just getting into to make money because shit happens. It's hard to start a business. This is not easy. You don't just make money year one.
No, you don't. You don't, and usually you don't make money year 2, 3, 4. Like businesses typically don't become profitable till around year 4 or 5.
Yeah,
and that's okay if you're willing to make that investment. But if you're in it for a get rich quick, or you're gonna ride the GameStop stock up, or whatever it is, you have to be in a position where you're willing to commit to something long term. So my answer to that, person who's like, hey, what business should I get into? One that you envision yourself being in for more than 5 years.
Yeah.
Like the money is inconsequential because, marketing companies can be either very profitable or very not profitable. And the difference is the person that's running the company, not the industry. Same thing with roofing companies. We had a remodeling company that we've consulted for a long time, and they do things differently than any other remodeling company. So usually how remodeling companies would work is a variety of ways.
Yeah.
Usually you bid the job, you have initial deposit, and then you have the final deposit when the job is done. They do things very differently. They have milestone payments. We've done this. Now we're going to collect this. You want us to consult and write your plans? There's a fee for that. Even if you don't accept our plans and hire us, they have a very set standard that they force people into. One of my favorite things that Steve Jobs ever said, and going back to him at the beginning of our conversation, was he was a big believer in making the consumers bend to the company, meaning the consumers don't know what they want until you show it to them.
Yep.
And that's the same thing with our agency here. Business owners don't know what a marketing company should look like until I show it to them.
Yeah.
They have no idea. They have no miles, ruler, no yardstick, nothing to judge it by until I show them. So why on earth would I listen to a group of people that have never been or never owned a marketing agency before? It's the same thing for any other business. So if you're going out there and you're starting a roofing company or you're doing window washing or whatever, like there's innovative ways to be insanely profitable and successful and have a great team. You just have to not copy and paste off people who did it half-ass. Do your own thing.
Take care of your people.
Yeah.
And do your own thing. And it's not hard to do your own thing. Really, most of the time it's like it's finding that pain point. You saw a pain point in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a lot of businesses that were just getting taken advantage of, specifically in Livingston County. And I was like, I can do better. I can figure that out. And we already have the tools, or at least at the point I had the tools to do it. And some of those tools were more developed. The studio that we're sitting in right now was not this cool 2 years ago. We had a really terrible camera in the front that was like 1080. It didn't sync with the audio. It was awful. And over time it kept getting better and better and better. And that's because we never wanted to stop innovating this. And we're still not done. Like there's more coming in this space. But that's the thing is most people, they'll get to the first or second iteration and they'll quit and they'll say, well, this is enough or this is sufficient. And it's like, you got to keep growing.
Grow or die.
Yeah.
Right?
It's you got to figure it out. And going back to what you said about people doing their own thing, like, yeah, do your own thing. Most people don't because it's difficult to figure, it's difficult not to copy off somebody, right?
For sure.
If there's an industry out there, you're like, well, I'm just going to do what they're doing, but I'm going to do it better. It's like, well, how?
Well, so you saw a definitive problem though in the space. There's no clear picture.
Yeah.
There's no marketers. There's people that call themselves marketers. They're just, like you said, posting social media posts, or they're doing one tiny thing in the whole entire landscape, the whole entire picture.
Yeah, their best advice is you need to be on social media. It's like, thanks, Marjorie, appreciate it. Great advice.
I had a client I started working with before the pandemic, and he came to me and he was like, "I've got these 6 marketing plans that I've bought over the past." Like he's bought these, like he's got. I'm like, "Have you implemented any of them?" He's like, bits and pieces here and there. And it's like,
love it.
It's like, which one do you think I should? He's like, I'm talking to another one for another marketing. I'm like, dude, do not hire another marketing plan. Yeah. Do not get another marketing plan.
Yeah, maybe that 7th one will do it for you.
Yeah, man, no. But so there's a huge problem in the process, that you saw. But even for people that want to copy, there are companies that say they do certain things in industries that are not doing. The majority are not doing those things. So it's not hard to go in and be a difference maker within your industry. Just actually do the things that other people say they're doing.
Yeah, that's a really novel idea that I think people have missed. Is do what when you say you're going to do something, do it.
Do it.
And that's hard for people. And that sounds such like an elementary thing to say, but it's a fact. Speak less, listen more, and do what you say you're going to do. And if you can't do those 3 things, business is going to be very hard for you. A lot harder than, it should be. And it's not easy. This is not a lifestyle that is for everyone. This morning I walked in and we were talking about Boxing Day, weird conversations we have here sometimes. This is the day after Christmas. And typically it's where the higher ups flip places with the people on the lower end of the ladders. Right?
Oh yeah.
It's a Canadian thing. And I said, all right, so who wants to flip places with me? And categorically everyone's like, oh, hell no. Because it's not what you think it is. It's not like it's all fun. It's late nights, it's early mornings, it's weekends, it's problems. It's money problems. It's people problems. It's all of that. And that's what I signed up for.
Yeah.
So you don't want to get shook or frustrated by it, even though some days you absolutely feel that way, but that can't be your main disposition.
And you have to have a root of why you're doing this that's deeper than just making money.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if I wanted to make money, I would go work as a creative director for another company. Like hell, I have an MBA, organizational development. Like I could go and make 200 in a week probably. Like go and find a job that would just be killing it at.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Not about that.
Yeah, I don't care to do that. Like I want to do this. Like regardless of the money, I enjoy this.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. And if you're making decisions on money, there's no longevity in that, because when something shinier comes up, you're just going to keep bouncing from place to place to place. And one of those times you're going to make a really bad decision.
Yep. Yeah. You're going to step in that landmine.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just not worth it. It's not worth it to do that. You have to have something that can move you, that is outside of yourself, that you can stay focused on, that's not contingent upon how you feel. And that's how you can be really successful.
Awesome, man. To wrap this up, I want to give people a clear picture of, you have this podcast studio, you have the marketing company. How do you bring that all together to elevate your clients?
Yeah, the umbrella phrase that I use is businesses need to be their own media company. So whether you're a realtor or a roofer or a remodeler or whatever you are, you have to be in control of your own media. You might not want to be a podcast host, and that's okay. Podcasting isn't for everyone. It's for a minority of people, and that's okay. But the purpose of this studio, the purpose of our videography, the purpose of having all of the services that we do done in-house, which is critical. Another thing that marketing companies are infamous for is, hey, Jason, I'm going to do all your work for you, but I'm going to source it out in Fiverr or whatever. I hate that.
Yeah.
So we want businesses to be able to take our creative services and merge them with some type of video component to bring them authenticity, reliability, trust, to show that they're an authority in the market. And whether that's through a podcast, whether that's through video, whether it's through social media, whatever that is, we want to be the architect of that story that we're telling for you. And it needs to be transparent. If it's not, we have no interest in telling it.
Huge. It's so huge. It's you obviously know this has been a huge backbone of my business, is getting out there and creating those videos. And even at the beginning when I was doing it, I didn't think anybody was watching. People were watching, and it just gained traction over time.
It's insane. Both, your videos and some of the stuff that I did early on, like I thought the same thing. No one listens, but then you see someone say, hey, I've been following you since 2019.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's weird.
Now it's getting really weird.
Yeah. But that's the point. Like when people are like, hey, what's the value of like posting on Facebook or Instagram? There is no immediate value, right? There's really nothing that I can do from a post perspective that's going to make a post today and make money tomorrow. It doesn't really work that way.
Yep.
It's leading someone on the journey with you. And then when they're ready to buy, they're going to go to the most trusted, most reliable source that has been by their side the entire time.
Yep.
That's what the point of social media is.
And so, to take that even further with video, I've had people ask me, why would you do a video versus doing a post? Because especially like I do LinkedIn a lot, and LinkedIn written posts will get more views, more traffic than a video post.
Yeah.
But taking people on this journey, like people know who I am.
Yeah.
5,000%. I've been in local restaurants, and people have come up and introduced themselves to me because they recognize my voice. Like I've had meetings. I had a meeting a couple years ago with this lady that watched my podcast and everything. And I booked a one-on-one with her. And when we got on the podcast, she was like, oh my God, you're real. And I'm like, yeah, what do you mean? But it's one of those things. She's watched me through my journey, right? She was like, she literally said that. She was like, I've watched you like some people watch their favorite actor on Netflix, right? And as I've watched you, and now we're sitting here talking, and she's like, as embarrassing as it is, it was just kind of the first thing that came out of my mouth. But that's what you create, is you put it out there, and people, it's authentic, it's you, and the people that like that will tune in.
Yeah, that's what people want. They don't, there's a reason why like reality TV is so popular. Granted, it's somewhat manufactured, but people want to see the story.
Yeah.
Like if I did a podcast my first year about like how successful everything was and it was perfect, like no one would have listened. But instead I did a podcast about all the, like I did a show on the first client I lost, how I screwed up a videography deal, how I lost money.
That's awesome.
I did all of that because that was important. One, for me to like restate what happened, almost like a commit to memory.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to hire a videographer with a drinking problem. I'm not going to, I'm not going to, because that was the thing. I had a really good, trusted friend who was credible, didn't live in the state. And I had another guy who someone just recommended to me that was a little bit cheaper. And I was like, well, I'll just try this dude out since he's local. And shit, that was a mistake. You have to be able to articulate your losses. You have to be able to articulate, I hear people say all the time, like, I don't believe in failure. I don't believe in losses. It's like, well, then you're living in a fairy tale land. Like, I get the mindset of like failure is not an option, but like, shit, man, it is absolutely an option. And it's one that we demonstrate often. And that's okay.
It's the one we learn the most from.
Absolutely. Like, I don't want people going out there taking L's just for the hell of it, but like, I want people to go out there and take risks and push boundaries.
Yeah.
Because that tells me they care. They're saying, hey, I'm trying to get this done. I'm trying to innovate. I'm trying to do something new. And if we have to, take a couple punches because of it, like, I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with recklessness or being careless, but like, failure is an excellent educator. That's essentially how this company has been built, is by learning what to do or having really good success, hitting a massive roadblock and learning how to navigate around it.
And you can't pay for that. I mean, you did, but you can't pay for that just to learn that even in school.
Yeah, even in coaching, like, you do consulting, I do consulting. Like, it's very hard to articulate those losses to other people. Like, doing it firsthand is sometimes the best experience, right? You can give people advice. You can say, hey, don't invest in Dogecoin. Don't do this or that.
Yeah.
And you can help them on the path, but like, you kind of got to learn it for yourself. You kind of got to go out there and experience it.
It could be tough as a leader, a coach, a father, a parent.
Yeah, the parenting
but
thing.
It's the
same thing. It's like, hey, don't go down those stairs. All right.
You learned, right?
Yeah.
But you won't do that again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're not gonna do that again. So, and it's the same thing in business. It's like, hey, don't work with this person. Don't do that. You're not going to have a good time. I had a good quick story. I had a client a year ago come to me for a web build. We're too expensive, unnecessarily priced, overpriced, not worth it. Yeah, I get it, man. Cool. They told me who they were going with, and I was like, good luck. A year later, they're like, hey, our website is jacked up. Can you help us out? And it's like, now we're more expensive than we were last year. So shit, yes, we can help you, but it's going to cost you.
And not only that, but they already paid for their cheaper site.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they paid for this. It's not cheaper when you have to pay twice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And to be clear, I didn't raise my price to spite them. We just, our services just logically went up over that last year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the thing. If they would have paid what I quoted them a year ago, and stay on retainer, they'd be in a much better spot.
No problem.
But yeah, it's interesting. It's not cheap to pay twice. It's a good word.
It's a great lesson to end it on, man.
Absolutely.
Rob, thanks for making it all the way down here into your own studio.
Yeah, long journey. I enjoy making it. So I appreciate having me on.
I appreciate having you on. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.